some acorns. This one's covered in acorns. This is the new engine in the terrain. Rat snake kind of went up into the wheel well. I was letting it go, so I thought maybe he was just going under the terrain. So he went up into the engine. So I popped the hood, saw all these acorns, put them in there so that the mouse wouldn't eat them. I didn't think it would dye the water, but it's dyed the water black. That was yesterday. I set a mouse trap. Had me some luck with some peanut butter. So I can kind of tell. It looks like a female, pregnant female. So I want to say it's got 6 nipples. No, 5 nipples. With one of them kind of long. So this one probably got some babies somewheres. So I'm going to keep my eye here peeled. For some little squeals and things. Because you'd think a nursing baby. That looks good. Nursing baby's going to start crying sometime today when it gets hungry. I still do have my a tub devoted just for nursing babies. It's got like a little, that nursing nesting jar. I'm gonna reset this, put it back in case if there's more mice that frequented this. Next day. No babies yet. No rat snake yet to feed the mice to. Reset the trap. Got this one last night. It's an interesting looking one. Kind of like a shrew. This morning, this was eaten out. A little hole was eaten into it. That was 4 hours ago. There was a little hole eaten into it. I saw this one in the trap. I figured, oh, this one must have eaten it last night before I got caught. So I just rebaited the trap, you know. That was like 4 hours ago that I did pull this, you know. I finally got around to rebaiting the trap. When I come back to rebait the trap, whatever was eating it last night came back and ate out even more. And you kind of see it push the guts up onto the leg of that one. So there's like a hungry little meat eater mouse in here. So I got my bag of mice, 2 mice. The next day, got this. This is like, OMG. So I caught another one of those gray mice last night, it looks like. And then another mouse, you know, maybe the cannibal mouse, came in and ate basically the whole of that other mouse. So this is gonna be a silent walk just around the property. Set to some radios. It's kind of clear the side area. So several years ago, I sprinkled a lot of different seeds, just all kinds of things. 2 of which were the mustards, and the mustards kind of did real well down in there, and the kales, which kind of around. And they're still coming back, so I just chopped this down. Blackberries going crazy, you know, so I'm gonna chop them down, And then in the spring, late winter, early spring, hit them with the poison to keep them from coming back. But that kind of clearing the area. Got some kales still coming back, you know. There's kale, there's kale, there's kale, there's a kale, there's a kale. And you never know how many kales I cut back. And these yellow berries aren't any good. Oh wow. And there's another kale. It's the horse nettle, yellow berries. Poisonous. Pink ones are good though, coral berries. So I left this general area because it is a thicket of coral berry. It's more decorative. You can eat the berries, but there's no real flavor, but there is nutritions. So poop is the fan, you know, but it's got the kales. That's where the mustards were doing good. Now there's a handful of mustards over here. Where are they? Wow. It's been a little bit since I've been over here. This is scary. Oh wow, look at that garden spider. I just kicked over a fire ant nest and there's a garden spider. Garden spiders aren't that common around here, they're actually pretty rare. It's kind of rough. I kicked over a fire ant nest. Fire ants are going to be a problem. Maybe these aren't fire ants, I don't know. Yeah, they look like fire ants. Well, there's mustards around here. I can't believe I can't see them. Oh! Here's like a really tall one. Trying to get some light. Now that it's cold out, they're sprouting. There's one. There's a couple more. Most of the mustards though are kind of growing up and around on the thing. So got mustards and things growing over there. Mustards and kales. So it's not really naturalizing the mustards and the kales, you know, like it's not a competitive plant, but it is still a plant, you know, a few years later. And say lubber, I think, grasshopper. Where is he? These are really big grasshoppers. Really big, colorful grasshoppers. Lubber. Sometimes like 2 inches, 2.5 inches long. Big as your finger, your forefinger. Yeah, it's getting to be poop hits the fan though. So I really don't do anything over here. This was, I had my original trail. Like before I made the driveway, this was my original walking trail. Like my first videos, this is the trail I was taking. So, you know, further 20 feet, I'll be cutting down eventually. This is how it goes out, but probably won't. I might be doing a thing. Yeah, anyway, so this is going to be a quiet video. I don't want to be doing a narrative. But in general, it's kind of like about 6-7 years ago, it became apparent to me that we had a civil war incoming. And it was kind of crazy talk at the time. You know, people had mentioned it too, just like, oh yeah, okay. One of the people, an old landlord of mine, I was like, you know, I'm on fringes, so I'm one of the first people to see it, but eventually it's just going to be more and more people drawn in. And kind of one of the clips I'm going to be playing, these radio clips, is Sandy Rios. And kind of just one example of, that's the driveway, one example of normal people being drawn in. This example right here is like a homeschool mom, you know, being brought to the point where, you know, civil war is like an option. So it's kind of took 6 years to go from the fringes to your homeschool mom, you know. Kind of, you know, if you look at that like being this, it's probably just this much left before it's open more. You know, you look at the amount of things that need to happen, you know, being like 8 inches. We're probably about 7 inches into that 8 inches, you know, to go from someone on the extremes, like myself, you know, on the societal side, to a homeschool mom, you know. So it's probably only about an inch left. And this is kind of just some clips of people, you know, quote unquote normal people, you know, other people. You know, the common terminology is civil disobedience, but really it's kind of, you have a, you know, the right, the freedoms, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you know, those kind of God-given rights, basic fundamentals, you know, that the country's built on. And, you know, with these COVID vaccinations, where you can't work, you can't get medical treatment, blah blah blah, all the different things that they'll be adding. You know, Australia has kind of a full complement, you know, where they're building a quarantine, you know, where you're going to be, what do you call that, put in a camp if you refuse the vaccination, where you're just basically locked up in a concentration camp. And that's kind of what the far left would like to have done here, you know. But all those different radical measures are infringing on your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, these fundamental God-given rights. And kind of mentioned, you know, I think Sav mentioned it, the founding fathers, you know, calling for civil disobedience when the government gets that dictatorial. But in general, so I do got a 22 revolver now, kind of for my gun preps. The start of my gun preps. Still need some scopes and more ammo and cases and things like that, you know. Some earmuffs and things. That'll be later on. I get those. That's for hunting. Yeah, I'm doing this because to me, it's not a war you can win. You know, I'm an end timeser. You know, like, if this weren't the end times, it'd be kind of like, yeah, let's put down the revolution. So what's happened is there's already been a coup, soft coup. You know, the whole stealing of elections, rigged elections. Local elections, you know, being cheated and stolen just because they're easy to do, you know. So this is my personal opinion, but I believe it to be 100% blatant, obvious fact that the left is just, you know, satanic And they have no qualms with lying, stealing, cheating. And conservative Christians, more so, actually, value honesty. So the left is just gonna freely, openly lie, cheat. You know, you hear every word out of Psaki's mouth is a lie. Every word out of the mainstream media's mouth is a lie. You know, they can't utter a fact, a point of truth. All they can do is lie, manipulate. They've started that process, and they've taken those lies and made them fundamentals of their reality. So kind of, you know, where they're at now, way over here, is just built up on so many fundamentals that are all lies, you know, where they just can't, there's no way they can say something truthful, because they'd have to go back on the whole premise that they've built. Anyways, so it's already been a coup, you know, stealing of these elections, the deep state and all that. That would be more of an Alex Jones type video, which I'm not, you know. It gets hazier, even though it's the truth. It's harder and harder to you know, say definitive things. But what do you call it? Kind of so bad that it's pretty easy to see at this point the Civil War. You know, so that's kind of why I'm doing the Civil War thing video. But then it being end times, people can't win. You know, it's kind of, if this were a normal one, you know, you could put down the rebellion, this coup that's happened. But at this point, it's just kind of in the hands of God. You know, people can fight, you'll have those sides, but really what comes down to the deciding factor, the winning factor, is God's intervention. Just kind of saying, you know, all right, this is enough, and then bam, it's over. You know, kind of just speaking it, you know, he'll put an end to it. But it's gonna get, you know, you'll be bloodied trying to fight it. And it's kind of like, you look at this. It's kind of like, this video is gonna be called The First Signs of Winter. So this is really late November. This is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So I don't know what that makes it. So it's still not winter, it's still fall, but there's no leaves left, pretty much. It's kind of the first signs of winter. And kind of the whole thing with this is just kind of the eluding, you know, to the end times, fall society. So kind of first signs of winter, you know, winter's coming. First signs of winter, first signs of Civil War video, you know, kind of people talking about civil disobedience being the respectable way of saying Civil War, both being the same thing, you know, just the amount of disobedience that is called for and justifiable, you know, and radical in nature, just gets more and more extreme, you know, more action is called for, justifiable. And it's just a great point, you know, where it goes from civil disobedience to Civil War. You know, it's hazy, you know, there's just technical points, you know, where you can just debate it back and forth, but really it doesn't matter. It's all the same. It's all shaded, you know, gray, that whole zone. Yeah. The sun shining through. It's like a beginning of winter. No trespassing signs. That's the driveway. Gravel road. This is Saturday, so there are four-wheelers out. Right there is my corner post. Somewhere's over in there. There it is. The white T-bar. then there are the lines. The four-wheeler people. Lines painted on the trees. Wow, there's a lot of them. So one of the reasons for staying on the property is because it's Saturday. You get four-wheelers like that. So I really don't want to be out in the woods. But they managed to catch me when I was exposed. I like to stay hidden. Some people saw me though. These lines are corner post. This one drifted out of bounds. Corner post to these lines. This is my property line. So it's a war you can't win. People bring me anxiety. Nature's a lot more predictable than people. Nature's brutal in its honesty, you know, both in the harshness and the pain, and then the beauty and the pleasure. Freezing at night and then getting warmed up by the sun, you know, it's so harsh and then just so great, you know. And you got like machinations of man to stay in this lukewarm all the time, miserable lukewarmness. Kind of when without those bads, there can be no good. You know, that lukewarm just becomes a hazy bit, becomes the bad. You know, you end up making up your own problems. Which is where you have these radical leftists, transgendered radical leftists. Their mom's smoking weed and drinking while they're pregnant with them. So they come out predisposed to being messed up in the head. And they take to drinking and smoking weed, and they just, now they think that they're a transgendered mushrooms. Because they got no real problems. They just make up their own. It's a rough world for a mushroom to grow up in. To try to, you know, get a suit and tie job. Mushrooms probably have a hard time doing that. All they can do is yell and scream and cry and throw fits. Demand things. Which is what they're doing right now. Millennials and Gen Xers. There's the property line right there. But yeah, this is tranquil, predictable, tranquil. You come to accept that harshness in exchange for the beauty, and you find that it's balanced in the end, you know, what nature offers. And that kind of a balanced honesty is what keeps you centered and all that jazz. A lot more than these made-up roles, societal roles. Yeah, so it's a war you can't win, and being out here is great. Out in nature takes getting used to. I want to say after 2 weeks being out in the woods, I start to want to stay out in the woods more and more. I want to avoid society more and more. You know, it takes about 2 weeks for me to get that affinity for nature to be stronger than my affinity for, you know, society. So I'm kind of, in general, 2 weeks of laundry. It's time to do some laundry, do some grocery shopping. So in general, my stays out here are less than 2 weeks at a time, before going into town, before driving the car into town and going to a store, where there's people around and societal things, man-made structures and things. But after 2 weeks, you start to grow up more and more akin to nature. And then it takes a couple months being in the woods to really find your groove. It's kind of like if you're like a musician, you start off a song with just a beat. It's just, you really don't have any inspiration. You don't really know where you're going, what you're doing, but you have this beat, or you have like a line or two that you like, and then you start making that song, and as you make the song, it fleshes itself out to you. You kind of see the potential, find the inspiration and all that. And that's kind of after like several months being in the woods, you find your inspiration. Kind of right at first, it's kind of like, oh, what do I do? You're just kind of at a wall. So you just kind of pick the most obvious things and do those. Get started on those, which is a place to poop and a place to stay out of the rain and to keep your stuff dry, And once you got those, it's kind of building off of those. And one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you've got like a finished song. You have a setup and a routine and a system, But it's just kind of, the first steps are always, just facing a wall and just picking the obvious, going with that. And the needs present themselves as they come up. So it's kind of like, I've been out here now probably about 4 months, and kind of the first month out, it's kind of like, month and a half, 2 months, it's just fishing, doing trot lines, and then bow fishing, trying out different fishing things. And there really wasn't a whole lot of pressing projects, but kind of you get started on the projects, and then more and more projects present themselves, as I kind of fill out that thing. That's after 4 months so far this trip. Now it's kind of like I got a backlog of projects. She was beautiful, even in winter. Yeah, and I've done all the different things in society, other than like a relationship. There really haven't been any good women out there. And I'm not, it's a sign of the times where good women are hard to find. And what they want is just everything that's bad for them. It's kind of like they're the fat kid that just wants to eat sugar and salt all the time. That's kind of what women have become. Modern women, modern Western women. Granted, you have like your Mennonite and Amish, which are still, I guess you'd call them Western, but they're old school Western. And there was one lady just recently. So I've been looking at the dating sites for, 11, 12 years. I was really only 2 worth messaging, and of those 2, 1 that was actually good. That seemed like a good woman. But yeah, I'm not much of a good man anymore. I'm getting too old for that. So it's, you know, makes sense. Why would she want someone like me? Other than that, though, I've done everything I've wanted. Did the passive incomes through rentals, renting out rooms. Passive incomes through selling those 3D models. Active income, selling tea and mushrooms that I've gathered. Boxing them up and shipping them, you know. All the jobs I've had have been crap jobs. You don't have careers in carpentry anymore. That's kind of been cast aside. Now you just have jobs that people leave every few years. You know, retention for carpentry jobs is, you know, months to a couple of years. And now it's basically months, you know, at this point. So society doesn't have anything for me. I've explored it enough. And it's just rotten. Very much like Sodom and Gomorrah. And the townspeople, I won't even go into it. And it's kind of, that's why I'm sitting it out. Some oak galls. Those are different kinds of galls. Use oak galls to make ink. You never know. So I see myself as being one of the people that go through, I don't believe in, or at least I'm not, pre-trib rapture. You know, I think I'm going to be going up mid-trib. Probably something, you know, like with the seals. I want to say it's before the 5th seal opens. The last of the Christians have to be taken away. And, you know, those Christians right there, the last of them, that remnant, they're going to be going through quite a bit of the tribulations. You know, 7 seals, you know, they go through 4, I think. And that was mushrooms, which just leaves. You never know if the people, Christians surviving to that point, if their fight is you know, blessed, you know, and they're martyrs for it, or if it's not, you know, and it becomes a mark against them. Because it's kind of, you know, more or less based off hate, you know. So those trees were the border, that fallen one. And while that's part of it, you know, I guess hate is part of the equation. It's not necessarily all the equation, so you can put that hate aside, you know, and try to be more righteous about it. But my rule of thumb is you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I'd rather die getting bit by a cottonmouth or black widow or rattler than, you know, doing some fightings. And it'd be real hard for me. You know, for me, that call to action is like, you know, having, you know, quit smoking, you know, stopped smoking a couple of times. It's very much like giving up an addiction. You know, that nagging, itching need to have a cigarette, you know, that's kind of like my need to take action. Just constantly nagging and itching, as long as I'm dwelling on it. But it's kind of, you know, comfort and succor is provided to where, you know, you don't need to suffer through that. You know, you can be at peace. You know, being nature gets rid of all that nagging and itching. So, well, it's probably possible, and some, I'm guessing, have a role. You know, this is my role, what God wants me to do, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I'm sure God has made it other people's roles to do different things, you know, in these times. You know, you never know what it is. And some of those roles may be, you know, civil disobedience and all that. But I don't think it's my role. I think I'm sitting pretty on what I'm supposed to be doing. So, you know, it's kind of poop or get off the pot. I'm just getting off the pot. I'm not going to be trying to poop out a civil war. And it's always kind of glorious and valiant at the outset of any kind of conflict. But once you get your feet wet, you're kind of dedicated. You know, there's really no turning back. You know, it's kind of, you get started, and then every time a helicopter flies overhead, you're going to be thinking, oh, is that the FBI, the CIA? You know, it's going to be like constantly looking behind your back. You know, and no one may be following you, you know, like, depending on the severity of what you're doing, you know. But you always have that uncertainty. And it's not a good way to live your life. Uncertainty, hate, violence. That could just be, you know, that's their mess. If you want to be part of that mess, you're responsible for it, you know, and you got to take action. But you don't have to be part of it. You know, it's kind of, I think all of this technology and all that is just kind of eating that from the fruit from the tree of knowledge. And it's not just eating it, you know, that single act, that was the point of a snowball rolling downhill. It's getting bigger and bigger, and all these technologies are just the bigger and bigger snowball from that single start point. You know, so it's kind of none of this stuff we were supposed to have. All these modern technologies, all these societal structures, you know, getting rid of them gets you closer to that Garden of Eden. Granted, we are in a fallen state, you know, so it's, you know, not blissful, but it's kind of a punishment, but a punishment within reason. You know, it's, you're given succor even in this punishment, so it's not as good as it could be back, you know, in its blissful time, pure garden state, but it's still not bad. And keeping in mind that, you know, God spares the sparrow, property line. That's the far side over there. There's a hunting lease on this valley down here. and then over that ridge, it's all deforested. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. Got spared the sparrow, but that's kind of the kind, you know. Sparrows will freeze, sparrows will starve, sparrows will get eaten by cats and other things. Individual sparrows pass away, but it's kind of that kind, that species, you know. And kind of my view with it's just wind on the far hill. My view is that eventually, you know, the species, the chosen, will be removed from the planet before it goes supernova. You know, and the species will be kept alive on other planets. Humankind. That's its own other thing. What do you call it? While I'm drawn to participate, it's not worth it. So, anyways, that's kind of, I guess, a preliminary spiel. Kind of setting up for this. You know, I'm not saying, you know, these individual things, clips, radio clips. This would be Sandy Rios, Elijah Schaefer. I want to say it's like Jim Cavaliers or something. Kind of giving a Reagan speech, a speech from President Reagan that I find particularly applicable. You know, when he was giving it, it was about the communists. And it's kind of quasi-communist now. You know, the far left is, it's just, you know, different, you know, avenue along the same direction, the satanic direction. You know, communism, fascism, you know, that general authoritarianism, just impeding on other people, their choices and all that. But it's just kind of a rehash of a Reagan speech. Those would be kind of the silent clips. I'm not condoning anything. In fact, I'm just laying it out that it's probably better to, you know, best thing is just making peace with God and avoiding it. And when you're dependent on the system, you can't avoid it. You got to participate, you know, passively or actively. There's no being in the system and not participating. If you're in society, you're participating to some degree or another. So I'm saying it's best to not participate. But, you know, this is kind of, you know, it's taken 6-7 years maybe for homeschool moms to be drawn in. And when it gets to that point, it's running out of time. Very nice. Property line right there. This particular, I wanted to say these are beech trees, but also that these are like ironwood trees. Maybe these are beech. I don't know. Kind of how it's got the muscly look to it. But yeah, it's gonna be a property line right there. That's gonna be it for my spiel. You kind of see how this is just all on a hill. And what's that right there? What is that? That's the house. That's the roof of the house. Bunker house. That's it for me though. This will be kind of the rest of the perimeter walk to some clips
some of the detainees are being asked to be transferred to Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, because in fact, as of right now, there are better conditions inside of Guantanamo Bay than there are inside of the DC jail, and I'm going to back that up with facts. If you could take it off the screen. So I know this may not surprise you guys, but so during the midst of this, it just came out yesterday. Specifically, if you can go on my screen, thanks to the work of Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch and others that I've been working with that are really doing a fantastic job on this case. Like I mentioned, I mean, there's one thing about activism holding up a sign, Savannah, but like this is where I think people need to be patient. I don't think they see the amount of work that goes on behind closed doors to try to change these things, because you're obviously not going to free these people by like burning down the walls. We're trying to figure this out. And it's definitely wrong, and it hurts my heart, and it should piss you off, but I just want everyone to be patient, because obviously we're like, even with Andy, how we're going to raise money for his legal defense fund, and we're trying to prosecute John Hacker. A lot of what the show is switching to in activism is legal, is going through legal courts and through routes to try to win. And do you know why we're doing this?
Why?
Because I want to fight as far as we can legally, so that when we lose officially legally, people realize there is no other options. Like, we need to exhaust our options so that people can wake up and see what's eventually going to happen.
Right. I was reading a tweet about how in the Constitution it talks about overthrowing a corrupt government. And so, you know, what you're talking about right now is essentially like, okay, well, let's see just how corrupt the government is. Maybe it really isn't corrupt. Let's find out by going through the judicial process here and trying to get justice for these political prisoners.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's what a lot of us are doing, is trying to guarantee that we're doing our best to show the American public that every option that can be used, an avenue that can be used, is utilized, so that when they show us that we no longer have hope in the courts, people wake up to realize that there may only be a few other options, and those options we'll wait to find out what they are, because that's sometimes that my mom always taught me this, that part of the way that you understand God's will for your life is like sometimes you get upset because things don't go your way.
Right.
But obviously, like sometimes, like when something's the option, the only option, like you know that's a part of God's plan for your life. So rather than getting discouraged, you go, sometimes God allows even things you thought was the right path to be taken away from you, so you see which path He wanted you to go down. And sometimes that path is difficult, and it doesn't feel good, it's not amazing, and it's not what you want for your life. But God is saying, look, I know you don't want this, but I'm gonna allow you to go through this. I'm gonna walk with you through this path so that you are encouraged, that you are strengthened. And you know what? I don't think God loves to see these political prisoners suffer. I don't think God loves to see the abuses that are going on. God doesn't love abuse. But if our government is corrupt and our government needs to go, if they need to be removed by whatever means, and we'll just say peacefully for the sake of the show right now, through a national divorce, then we need to make sure that we remove the options from the table so that people don't have any second guesses when the time comes that we need to completely split apart as a country. It's like, you know what? No, we tried, we did everything we could, and now we need to split our ways. You know what I mean? Like we have to. That's what my mom said. It's sometimes the paths you want to take go away so that you're sure that God really wanted you to go on the hard path. Like it's like, well, it's my last chance, so here we go, God. And then you go on that path with His provision, with His comfort, with His strength, and you face the trials, you face the difficulties, and it makes you a stronger person. Files are trying to destroy my whole life and the lives of everyone who has any power or stands for anything right. I'm not alone in this. It's just, now let me up. Things are so bad right now. It is so bad.
It's pretty bad.
It is so bad. It is so bad. So I'm so sorry to the audience of this show. This has got to be the most chaotic thing. And I also do want to give SOBs a personal shout out here. So first of all, you can get merch right now using Offensive 20. I think it is. Isn't that what it is? Yeah, Offensive 20. You can get merch 20% off the Blaze shop. So get some for your family. Go buy Slightly Offensive merch for me. I actually make that money myself. It literally comes to me. And also my new merch comes out. So within like 2 weeks, the OG merch won't be available anymore. So like buy merch now and buy merch then. But what's cool is I'm launching a new merch store right when it's the holidays. And then you also get coupons So it's kind of cool. And also Stab gets a portion as well, so you will need to support us on that. And that's why you also need to subscribe to his channel, Stab Says, and support Rapid Fire Podcast. But in the midst of all of this, so I need to breathe here. I see you guys, and I read your comments, and you guys say that the show is very underrated, that even if it got 1 million views, it would be underrated, and I thank you for that, because it's literally this is so sad that that's truth, if you think that, because it literally means that not a lot of shows are telling the truth. And a lot of people are willing to skate around the truth. I'm just not doing that anymore. I've given up pretending and playing their game. I played a pretty safe game at one point, and they still called me a Nazi, a racist, a xenophobe, and a bigot. So it's like, I'm not playing the game. I'm not going to do it. And the only reason why I'm able to not play their game is because you guys support us so well. And I'm telling you that genuinely. It's because you guys support us. And I know that, and I see that, and I know what you guys are going through. I know that you feel the combination of the anger, the fear, I know you feel the combination of the hilarity and the insanity and the depravity that's going on around us. And I know that you feel like you're going insane, and you wonder if you're the only sane person on the planet. And I just want to let you know you're not alone. That's just why people watch the show, because to connect with the people. Join the Telegram. Join the community, right? Really get on there. Join the community. And continue to support the show however you can, whether it's through the ads, the merch, or go blazetv.com/Elijah and become an official SOB at the way. We are all in this together. We are all feeling this. Savannah and I need a vacation. I don't know if I can, but I need time off. I'm going crazy a little bit because I'm talking to Congress, and I'm making my allies, and I'm getting ready for whatever might be coming. And I'm just letting you know that it's not good, and that things are not going to be getting better for a while. And so brace yourselves and make sure you really get in the fight. Don't be a casual viewer of the show. Really wake people up and join the fight and join the battle together, and genuinely realize that the world needs you. And I see you, and I know the pain that you feel, and I'm not going to abandon you guys. And that if we get fired from Blaze at any point for speaking the truth, which I don't think will happen, but if it did, or if we get taken off the air, I'm letting you know that I have everything in place. I have backup plans and backup plans for the backup plan. The show will never go off the air, and I will never stop fighting both in Congress, in the world, and on the streets, and we will not stop fighting for you guys. Just like they, took Alex and people offline, but they didn't go away because they have their own infrastructure. I have a very good infrastructure ready to be put into motion. Would probably only be off the air for like 30 days, and then we would be fully back online, ready to go with crypto and everything. So I just want to let you guys know that if you ever get deleted, wait and look for where we're going to be next. And you'll find out where we're going to be next on Alex Jones' show. If we get taken off the air and something happens and we disappear, you will see us on Alex Jones within 30 days, and we will tell you where we will be. That's true. I don't know if that makes you feel better, Savannah, but that's actually a true statement.
No, it does make me feel better, and it's really sad that we're currently living through a time right now where even me, for example, like I had to spend thousands of dollars to create a website so that I could have a place for my content to go. We have to go to all of these other alternative media platforms because everything that we're saying is constantly getting deleted, and it's getting deleted not because we're being misinformative with what we're saying, but because we're being too truthful with it, because we're calling out the evil, we're calling out the depravity, and we're calling out the mainstream media for the criminals that they are, because I've reached the point as well where kind of free speech absolutist, but free speech is not a place usually to both stop. The media is allowed to go to its side every single day, but when we have the audacity to tell the truth, we're the ones that are punished. So at this point, I just think that the media are criminals. They're propaganda arms of the Biden regime. They need to be stopped, and we need to take back our country, and people need to stand up. And again, the mandatory vaccinations are the hill to die on country.
Yep. Bad things are going to happen. The bad things are going to happen. There's bad things are happening. Very bad things are going to happen. I just stock up on food, stock up on water, buy a lot of guns, more ammo, just be prepared for whatever comes your way. And if that doesn't happen, great, then now you still prepared.
You know what's so funny though is that all of these crazy media heads that are telling you that report on the radicalization of
all just wanted to grill. I wanted to cook burgers, and I wanted to interview gay Trump supporters and be like, look, we can all get along.
Yeah,
I wanted that.
Throwback to that life.
Don't worry. Like I wanted that. I tried. I didn't play the middle ground. I still took strong stances, but I tried to unite. I said, I will work with you guys. We can live together. And we can't anymore.
It's time.
We are not called to be nice.
Sandy Rios, welcome, Sandy. Thanks for being here.
We are often called to be confrontational.
And here with me in D.C. is Fox News contributor Sandy Rios.
And you still like me, or you don't like me, James?
Are you okay? You all right?
I'm a musician. I can't help it.
Longtime Fox News contributor Sandy Rios, thanks very much for being with us.
We have, I think it's 4-1 youth in America want gay marriage. Our kids are the product of public schools. No wonder they pay the way they do.
It's time to stand up or we're going to lose everything we have.
Director of Governmental Affairs for the American Family Association.
Step up. Speak up. Say something. Do something.
This isn't a game. This is real life.
Sandy Rios is with the American Family Association.
A pro-life radio talk show host.
Some things are worth fighting for.
Policies are so pathetic and have done so poorly that the left has nothing else to do but troll the internet looking for ways to get offended and then try to target members and strip them of their committees. This is a dumb waste of the House's time. But since the Speaker has designated the floor to discuss members' inappropriate actions, shall we? The Jihad Squad member from Minnesota has paid her husband, and not her brother husband, the other one, over $1 million in campaign funds. This member is allowed on the Foreign Affairs Committee while praising terrorists. A Democrat chairwoman incited further violence in the streets outside of a courthouse. And then the cherry on top. My colleague and pretty much presidential candidate from California, who is on the Intelligence Committee, slept with Feng Feng, a Chinese spy. Let me say that again. A member of Congress who is being classified as sleeping with the enemy. This is unacceptable, and this would never be.
All right, Sandy Rios, with you, there is a battle going on in the country, and certainly it's going on in our Congress. And it's interesting to me, I talk to you all the time about my disgust, really, with most congressmen in the House and in the Senate, on both sides of the aisle. Mostly, I find my disdain goes to Republicans who fail to do hardly anything. But we have a whole crop of new Republican congresswomen and men in the House who are fighters. And the one you just heard then was Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Let me just say that she was just elected. She's brand new, and she was talking about the fact that Congressman Paul Gosar, also a fighter from the great state of Arizona, was censored last week for a video or meme that he posted that offended Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So he was censored, removed from his committee, and she was just demonstrating how corrupt the behavior of Democratic congressmen were in that body. So it was great firebrand stuff. But she would not be there if it weren't for people like my next guest. My next guest was her campaign manager. She's also the founder of America's Mom. And you're going to learn more about her as we discuss today, because many things have been happening to Sharona Bishop, and she's here to talk to us about that. Good morning, Sharona.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on, Sandy. I appreciate this. Thank you.
Sharona, I've seen you on camera already, and you're really dynamite. You're smart. You got your facts together. You know what you're doing. So it makes me wonder, what you did in the past. What you president of your sorority. What were you doing? What is your background that you have such good command of facts and all of that?
I read. I read a lot. I take that very seriously. I think once we all, when we have that moment in our lives where we begin to engage in policy and we really start to look around and try to figure out how we can help move the dial or how we can help put things back to good, you start doing those necessary steps. I ran a small business for almost 20 years now and worked with women and helped develop, just helping people develop their leadership skills and speaking skills and those sorts of things. So I think I've just always really benefited from seeing other people do really well. And so now here we are, applying some of that stuff to policy and helping regular American parents figure out what is going on, both locally, statewide, and now nationally.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those things. A couple of personal questions before we go into what's become public. You have kids. You homeschool your kids, right? How old are they?
I have 4 children. My oldest daughter, she's 18. She just graduated this last year. And then I have a 17-year-old son who is actually still in public school, which is a large reason I'm still so active in our local school district. And then I have my 2 younger children who are 8 and 10, and I homeschool them. We do a co-op, actually. And I will just say, we're homeschooling because of COVID policies. We're homeschooling our youngest because they do not deserve to be abused in exchange for a publicly funded education. And so it's not because I have this passionate desire to homeschool. It's because policy, once again, has infiltrated our lives, and we're forced to make decisions that will be the absolute best for our kids.
Yes, and since you're talking about schools, tell us your involvement in this is Colorado. I don't know if I said that. You are in Colorado, Mesa County. So tell us about your involvement in the school board issues there.
Well, I lived in Mesa County all my life. I recently moved up to Garfield County just a few years ago. That's when I met Lauren, actually. But my kids were in school in Mesa County for years, and we had a really good relationship with the community. Like I said, I owned a small business and worked with women constantly. So we still have a lot of really great relationships there. We actually, this the last election, November 3rd election in Colorado, I just want to really elevate all of the incredible grassroots parents, community members, grandparents all across the state who came together to say, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to allow our children to be indoctrinated anymore. They need to be educated. They need to be productive members of society. And because of that mentality and the incredible effort of grassroots people all across the state, we were able to flip 9 school board districts in Colorado. Mesa County has not had a conservative school board for 30 years. And it's absolutely incredible. In my backyard, Garfield County, we put so much pressure on our school board. We had 1 member resign, and then we were able to flip 2 additional seats, giving us the conservative majority now in my own rural backyard. So it's been quite a victory, I'll tell you.
That's amazing. And kind of honestly, I covered that election. We had a lot of victories like Virginia, and we had some in other states, Connecticut, I think even. There were a lot of pockets of success of conservatives, but I did not know about Mesa County until our conversation, until I was studying to talk to you. So you have that on your record. You were the campaign manager for Lauren Boebert, and we talked about that. We're going to get to 2016 a little bit later because Tina Peters, who has been in the news a lot, she's the Mason County elections clerk, will join us in a second, and we'll talk about all of that then. But you're actively involved in the school board issue, and that's anathema now to our federal government. I don't need to tell you that the president authorized really the FBI to go in, the Attorney General did, to go in and start considering parents involved in school board, supposedly threatening school board members and teachers. We're now going to be sort of targeted as domestic terrorists. And so that brings us to what happened to you about a week ago. And so you want to tell us about what happened. And let me just ask first, before this incident about a week ago, had you had any kind of signs of trouble? Were you nervous? Were you worried? Was there any pushback that made you nervous for your family or your safety?
The only thing that made me nervous was the verbal mandates and the written mandates going after parents. We live in Colorado, which has been very lawless under Governor Jared Polis, and many people in the nation think that Jared Polis is a moderate libertarian. That couldn't be further from the truth. He is a very radical, left-wing progressive, and he has passed a number of bills, 11 now, that are hypersexualized bills, remove parental authority over our children. It's been a very difficult 3 years under his reign of terror in Colorado. So for that reason, along with the enforcement of Biden's regime to go after parents who are vocal about 2 things, election integrity and school boards, I have felt a little bit like I just needed to make sure we were being taken. We actually received word about 6 weeks ago that our local superintendent in our school district had taken advantage of that offer and had called the FBI and reported parents to them. So so once I had heard that, I've been a little heightened, but I can't honestly say that I really believed the FBI would show up at my house. No. I thought.
So that's exactly what happened. So just give us like the opening paragraph, and then let's go into the details. What happened initially?
Yeah, Tuesday morning, we were homeschooling, and I was cooking for the week, and I started hearing banging on my front door. I'm still in my pajamas, because you know how it is when you're homeschool. You have so much more flexibility. You don't necessarily have to get up and start, running around. It's pretty calm and relaxed, and that's the environment we want in our home. So they began banging on the door, and I did think it might be neighbor kids at first, so when I peeked around the corner, I saw that, in fact, these were big black bodies at my door, and they were not children. At that point, I believe they started yelling, FBI, open up, the FBI, we have a warrant. And at that moment, I went and got my children, who were just absolutely wide-eyed with me. We really just didn't know what to do, and because, as I expressed already, the Biden administration absolutely supports this type of behavior, I was very concerned. I ushered my kids into their room, and I just said, stay here. I do not know what's going to happen. So stay put. And my husband, sorry.
All right. Well, look, who can withstand this without fear? But you know what? I'm going to interject while you compose yourself. I would just say this to you. I was a single mother of a grown teenage boy, and I remember once he said we were having a disagreement pretty strongly, and he was hurting me with his words, and I started crying, and I said to him, don't mistake these tears for weakness. And so, Sharona, that's when you're crying, that's what I want to say to you, that your tears do not mean weakness. Okay, so you put the kids, go ahead.
It's really some anger at this point. The more I think about it, the more angry I become, and my husband as well, that this would be accepted, that this would be considered responsible, use of force. It's just unbelievable to me. But we put them in their room, started making our way to the door. My husband had come out from his office, and he looked at me and said, okay, it's okay. We go to open the door, and at that moment, they took a battering ram to my door and busted my door open. From there, they had their guns drawn, and my husband was standing in front of me, and he had, his hands up trying to calm them down. They came to my home very amped up, very excited, very ready to do what I don't know what they thought they were going to find or walk into, but they were very amped up. And at some point, I had my phone in my hand, attempting to call our attorney, because I really didn't know what to do. I'm not a criminal. I've never been charged with anything in my life. I'm not violent. This is not an experience I've ever had before, or my husband, anyone in my family. And so I was trying to call our attorney, and they grabbed my phone from me, so I wasn't able to take pictures. I wasn't able to record. I was unable to reach out to my attorney or my sheriff, and they proceeded to handcuff me and led me and my husband both out of our home, out to the front. My children were still inside. My oldest daughter was downstairs in her room. She began making her way upstairs, came to the door, and just was blown away. We all were just absolutely in shock that this was actually happening. There was probably 8 FBI agents, who think that's about right, and an investigator from Mesa County, and multiple police officers from my community, including the police chief, who were out there. I asked repeatedly for them to call the sheriff and bring the sheriff there. They did not do that. I asked to call my attorney. They refused to do that as well. They did not show me the warrant until they felt like it. I asked repeatedly to see the warrant. I wanted to know why they were here, what justification they had to be at my home this way, and I wasn't given any answers. They proceeded to go into my home, go through my home, photograph every area of my home. My children were still inside. They were not with me. At one point, they came out of their rooms on their own accord and came to the front door because we still weren't inside. And so they saw everything. They saw their parents standing up there handcuffed, all of these men with their guns and their scary tactical gear just being crazy. And,
Sharona?
Yeah.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll pick up the story. And I have a lot of questions, a lot of follow-up questions for you about what that was all about. I know you don't know, but from your perspective at least. what Mary saw, because it is good. You've had about a week, or a little bit more than a week to think about this, and some things do occur to you that don't, quickly, as things kind of resonate. So my guest is Sharona Bishop, and she's a homeschool mom who dared to get involved in school board issues and elections, and the FBI raided her home. More about that when we return. Sandy Rios in the morning on AFR Talk.
Sandy Rios in the morning on American Family Radio.
After the 6th, we had an inauguration on the 20th. So I wanted to ensure, and our office wanted to ensure that there was shock and all that. We could charge as many people as possible before the 20th. And it worked because we saw through media posts that people were afraid to come back to D.C. because they were like, if we go there, we're going to get charged. We wanted to take out those individuals that essentially were thumbing their noses at the public for what they did.
Yeah, the public for what they did. He's talking about Michael Sherwin was the FBI. He's still the guy in place in D.C. overseeing the January 6th visitors to the Capitol when there was problems, a dust-up of varying degrees, fights, and also then Capitol police officers allowing them in, and then we had them surveilling, getting bank records and records of where they had stayed overnight, their phone records invaded, their privacy completely abused them, and we had the FBI visiting, like grandmothers and older men and doing the same thing as they had done to Sharona Bishop. We saw them label people who were concerned about the election of 2020 as domestic terrorists. And now we have morphed into the Justice Department accusing parents, suggesting, unleashing the Federal Bureau of Investigation on parents involved in school boards. And the other link to this, I think that's interesting, in the January 6th detainees that we've talked about so often, one of the litmus tests for them to get out of jail is that they must change their thinking about the 2020 election. We'll come back to that in a second, but I want to focus now on the FBI. It certainly doesn't take any convincing to people listening that this is exactly what happened to Sharona Bishop and her family about a week ago when the FBI came to their door, knocked the front down, all dressed in black, guns drawn, handcuffing Sharona and her husband. And so we'll pick it up at that point. Sharona, did they take you outside? They handcuffed you outside, didn't they? Or did they handcuff you inside and make you go outside? How did that work?
When we came to the door and they busted the door open, we were standing right there, and they pulled on my husband, bringing him outside. They grabbed my phone out of my hand, pulling me outside as well. So they brought us outside of our home and had us stand there and immediately put me in handcuffs. It was just it was a very surreal moment. And I was asking, what is this about? Why are you here? Later on, I'm sitting out there in my pajamas and their shoes on, and they were trying to backpedal for certain and inviting us to come back into our home. And I waited outside. I can't explain just kind of the feeling of no control. There's nothing you can do. You're outgunned, you're outnumbered, you're outpowered. There's literally nothing you can do. You're at the mercy of these people, and whatever it is that they think you've done or whatever they think authority that they have. And under this current regime, they have unbelievable authority. They're really able to do whatever they want right now. And I think that morning there were, part of my advocacy is for elected officials who do good things, who do the right thing by the people they serve. And elections have had some very serious consequences in our state. So you mentioned Clerk Peters and my support of her. I'm very vocal. I use my voice. I speak directly with law enforcement, directly with elected officials, and I take everything that I learned directly back to the people. I'm not interested in having secrets, protecting people in those positions of authority. I believe that people need to know and understand what's going on so they can do something about it if it's necessary. So I've always been extremely transparent. There was never any reason for them to come to me this way. There was never any reason for them to bust my door down. This is not something that anyone had to do in order to get information from me or to me or whatever it is that they felt they needed to do. And I think that's what's been so alarming is I was with them daily. I was with Mesa County law enforcement. I was with the clerk. I was there publicly, regularly, and even going so far as to hold a briefing for them on what we were finding with the Mesa County systems in particular. And all of them were there, including Mark Garland and Katia Day. They had zoomed in and were listening. So because I've been so transparent, and there's nothing to hide, you really want honesty, you want truth, you want solutions as parents. And it's shocking. It's shocking what they ended up doing. And I really can only come to one conclusion, that they did this to intimidate me, to shut me down, and they're going to set a precedent with this. Other parents are not as vocal. They're not as loud. They're still in that phase where it's a big deal to them to come and speak at a school board meeting. You know, we've had parents be disciplined at work in our area for speaking at a school board meeting on behalf of their children. So for them, that alone is a huge deal. Never mind standing up for an elected official who's saying, hey, I don't think the machines are safe for us to be voting on. So it's just a very interesting time for parents, for Americans in this country. If you're going to be vocal, if you're going to be out there, I believe that you're going to see a lot more of this.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the bottom line too, Sharona, and that looking at it from a broad perspective is what I try to tell my listeners is that you cannot run, you cannot hide. When the left, this is just traditionally the truth. When you look through history and you see when they take over countries and places and people, you cannot stay neutral. They demand your obeisance. You must bow at their feet. You can't just stay silent. You have to agree with them or you will be punished. So the flames may be licking at your feet now and you may be escaping them, but they will come after you. And the only way to stop this is to fight now. And people like you, Sharona, are exempling that. I mean, it's just amazing to me how steadfast you have been and what courage you've shown. So let me ask, let's get personal, because I think, you got neighbors, I'm sure you've been in that community you said you grew up there, but I imagine you've been knowing just a little taste of who you are now. I bet you have relationships with neighbors and friends. The personal price for this, have you felt shunned, encouraged, supported? What's been the response?
The response has been incredible encouragement and support. People know what's going on, and I am just so hopeful that it will motivate and inspire people that you have got to stand up with us. We can't allow just one person to be standing out there alone. We all have to keep coming to the table. We all have to keep speaking out. I was in the grocery store and the checker said, thank you so much for praying for you. I've had nothing but support, nothing but encouragement. The people know what's going on. The American people are not stupid, and the people in my state especially, because we've been living under this type of regime, this craziness for 3 years in Colorado under Governor Polis. And now that Biden's here, everybody's experiencing what this feels like. To have in Colorado, we just have the Department of Public Health watching their every move, looking for ways to shut your businesses down and trying to use law enforcement to do it. It's been a really hard 3 years in Colorado. And so we have each other's back. We know exactly what's going on. And they're not going to be duped into believing that this was handled professionally and responsibly. I know it wasn't. And for the district attorney in Mesa County, who partnered with the FBI to issue the warrant, he gave a public statement with the Attorney General of Colorado. His name is Bill Weiser. They gave a joint statement this past week saying that no brute force was used at Kirk Peters' home. They refused to acknowledge what they did to me, to my home, to my family. The great people here in Mesa County and in Garfield County and around the state where I live have been calling his office, the district attorney's office, to let him know that he owes me a new door. So therefore, they do know that force was used. They do know that they acted irresponsibly and unprofessionally. And it's amazing to see that they would go that far to lie to the public to cover this up. And that's why it's so important. I can't thank you enough for having me on, because everybody needs to know what happened. I'm not special. They're going to come after me. I have somewhat of a base, somewhat of a platform. But what's going to happen with the mom who's just been going to her school board when they come to her home and she has no one to call? He doesn't have someone to reach out to that can help get media connections or something. This is really a critical time for all Americans to be standing up and stand against this. We have an obligation.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, for me, you're singing to the choir because that's what I've been preaching for a long time. Sharona, without going into it, I've been involved in school issues for years. And I can tell you that this whole trend in school boards making parents the enemy, hiding things from them, sexualizing children, presenting horrible curriculum has been going on for decades. And I tried to cover that, but parents didn't want to hear it. They'd always say, not in my school. Oh, my school's not like that. We've got it. And I said, this is not new. It's just worse. And they're not hiding it anymore. Now they're the ones in power. And so I'm just, and then another little personal aside. And I should also tell you, Sharona, my husband is a former FBI agent. So you can't even imagine the anger and grief from a man who used to serve the Bureau on behalf of the American people, loves the country. It's a grief to him and to many other agents who served that agency. So I'm curious if you saw any kind of remorse, anything in any agent's eye, anything, anybody like wishing you thought, you can't know, can't be inside a person's mind, but maybe wishing they weren't there doing that?
To give them any credit right now, I think would not be wise on my part, because I intend to fight back. I definitely intend to push back on what just happened to my family. I would say at one point I asked them, I asked repeatedly to the different ones that were in my home, why are you here? What is it you think you're here doing? And they would just say, just doing my job. And I actually had the book Ordinary Men sitting out. I've read it a second time recently. The story of the basic police department, really, just a group of police officers who were used as the final solution in Hitler's, his disposal of the Polish Jews. And they were regular men. They were not battle-hardened. They were not warmongers. They were regular men. And that's what I thought of in this situation. And at one point, my husband was talking to our children in front of them about what is legal and what is lawful, and about our personal responsibility to do what's right in spite of what we've been told to do, to be able to make those distinctions. The FBI, then your husband can attest to this, and I've had two messages now from former FBI agents telling me that this type of action is reserved for criminals, for violent criminals, for human traffickers and drug dealers, not for suburban housewives. And, the charge or the warrant, even the way that it read, it's just ridiculous. It was just an opportunity to get into my home, to terrorize my family, and to use force with me. So, I just am at this point, they want me to be quiet. Stop talking, stop drawing attention to this stuff, and sit down. And just let us take over this country. And we're not going to have it. We're just not going to do it. So remorse? No, I don't think so. Maybe when they went home that night, they thought about it more. Maybe now that it's hit the national media, maybe they'll think about it more. But every single person has to decide who's in law enforcement what their oath, first of all, that they took to defend my constitutional rights and every person's constitutional rights. And then personally, whether or not they can make sense of what they're being ordered to do. And if it violates their conscience and it violates the Constitution, they have to say no.
That's right. In fact, that's part of the military code of, I think, justice, is that if you're a soldier, of course you have to obey orders, but you don't have to obey an unlawful order. And so, I mean, it's a principle. I'm not saying it applies to the FBI, I don't know. But you've got it, it's totally right. It reminds me of, Simon Wiesenthal wrote an interesting book called The Sunflower. It's on the possibilities of the limits of forgiveness. And he was a Jew in a concentration camp. And it's a fascinating story. But one of the things that he says as he's telling his story is that in the camps, it wasn't like the mean-looking, rough, tough, street gang criminals who were the prison guards or the ones beating people. It was like the bus driver that you remember. It was the teacher that you saw in school. It was the clerk, at the counter in a store you used to shop. It was, just to your point, ordinary people who did those horrible things to their neighbors. And it's just, we've never seen that. We've never seen that, but now we are seeing it. I think we saw it with COVID, Shona, that people punishing each other, and if they would snitch. If there were an authority to snitch to, they'd be glad to do it. You know, you could just see it. It's like, I just can't even explain it. There must be some word for it, but I don't know what it is. Depravity.
Well, it is depravity, and it's our nature. It is definitely our sin nature. We have to fight against that. We have to fight against fear. We have to fight against grouping ourselves just because we feel a little bit more powerful. That road of being humble, of being thoughtful, of having consideration before we act, that takes skill. That takes practice. Following orders doesn't take any kind of practice. And this country, for better or worse, the last 2 years have conditioned people to just obey and to submit. And whether it's our law enforcement who are doing it, in Colorado at one point we had law enforcement arresting fathers, a dad in particular who had been at the playground with his daughter, you know, arresting him, putting him in the car and taking him to jail. We're not going to forget that these things happen. And right now we're moving into, I think, the second phase of this conditioning, where our law enforcement is going to be willing to go after regular, ordinary people like me who said the wrong thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's happening constantly. I'm talking about these stories more and more. Sharona Bishop is our guest, and when we return, Tina Peters, who is the Mesa County Elections Clerk, will join us to tell her dramatic story when we return. This is Sandy Rios in the morning.
Sunday, heading back to town. Last 2 nights, no action. So the one that likes to eat the other mice doesn't really care for peanut butter.